So you think you might be a type 1, but you're not sure. You're just getting started on your Enneagram journey. You have a lot of questions, and that's normal. In fact, most people have a lot of questions when they first learn about the Enneagram. How do I know what my type is? And I actually think that I'm more than one type. This video is designed to go deeper into understanding the type 1 by looking at their core motivations, walking you through a type 1 checklist, i.e., you might be a type 1 if, and then providing a cheat sheet, an overview of how that one shows up in the world. And then lastly, I'll close out with, so now what? When working with a tool like the Enneagram, it's important to note one thing. The Enneagram is different from other personality tools in that it looks at an individual's core motivation, their why. So imagine, if you will, with me, an iceberg. Now, when you look at an iceberg, you can only see the tip of it. There is a whole big iceberg underneath the surface that you cannot see. So imagine that iceberg is the human personality. The tip of it are the behaviors that we can observe in people, like if someone helps an elderly person take groceries to their car or stands up to be the first in a meeting with an idea. These are things we observe. What we can't see, what's beneath the surface, what the Enneagram looks at is why? Why did that person choose to help carry groceries to the car? Why was that person the first to jump up with an idea? What was driving those behaviors? The Enneagram provides a map of 9 distinct personalities and how they navigate the world by understanding those motivators, their focuses of attention, defense mechanisms, their blind spots, so that we can ultimately grow. The Enneagram is not about putting you in a box. It's not about telling you that this is who you are and that's all you can be. Because unfortunately, we already are in a box of our own personality. And the Enneagram is about giving you the tools to get out of that box. So let's look at the type 1. What is the type 1's motivator? Now, one name for the type 1 is the reformer. And I like that because the motivation for a type 1 is this drive to be good, to be right. They want to improve not only themselves, but others and the world. The fear is that I am corrupt, that I am bad or wrong. And that ultimate desire for a 1 is to be good, moral, right, to make the world a better place. Oftentimes, 1s see the world in black and white. They want things to be better. They think if everyone just did their part, the world could be a better place. And it can drive them a little crazy that it's not. They have one of the harshest inner critics, constantly berating them, telling them how they should be better, they could be better, how they need to improve. If that's resonating with you, if those core motivations, fears, and desires seem to be ringing true, then let's take this further. Let's go through the type 1 checklist. You might be a type 1 if you have a strong inner critic that constantly evaluates your actions. You believe there's a right way to do things. You strive for perfection and get frustrated with mistakes. You feel responsible for improving yourself and the world around you. You value fairness, honesty, and integrity above all else. You suppress anger, but often can feel irritated or resentful. You prefer structure, organization, and clear expectations. You find it hard to relax when there's still work to be done. You hold yourself and others to a high standard. You feel guilty or shame when you fall short of your own expectations. Now, if all of these are ringing true, there's a good chance you might be a type 1. However, it still has to go back to what's motivating it. Oftentimes people say, but I had a parental figure that was really hard on me, and I still hear their voice in my head. I still have that inner critic. And that very well may be the case, which is why just having a strong inner critic doesn't make you a 1. What makes you a 1 is that motivation, that need to be good, to be right above all else. That type 1 has an unwillingness to cut corners. They strive for perfection and to do things to the best of their abilities. Now, what does this look like to the rest of the world? My type 1 cheat sheet of how they show up. Type 1s are going to be methodical and principled. They naturally see when there is something that is wrong or mistakes. They're detail oriented. So when I do presentations, I'll never forget when a type 1 came up to me and said, "Great presentation, but I noticed that sometimes you do 1 space after your sentences and other times you do 2 spaces. And there's just an inconsistency there." And it was so helpful for me because I'm not detail oriented. I didn't notice that. But 1s can naturally pick up on what's wrong and how do I make it better. When it comes to communication, they're clear and direct. They can even come across as critical. But that drive, the understanding is, let's make things better. Let's be better. Their strengths are they will hold themselves to a very high standard and they have integrity. Their integrity is more important than anything else, and they hold to it. Blind spots to be aware of is that 1s can be overcritical and have a tendency for perfectionism. Pet peeves that will drive a 1 batty is inefficiency and lack of discipline, or people who won't take responsibility for their own actions. 1s will always take responsibility for themselves, and they expect others to do the same. Challenges become being flexible. 1s will be more rigid and not want to adapt because oftentimes they go, but I figured out the right way. I figured out the best way to do something. Why wouldn't we do it that way? Others see 1s as disciplined and reliable and ethical. That's how they show up in the world. They are looked at, they oftentimes fall into leadership roles because they strive to be better and hold others to that as well. If you see on the right-hand side, and this is much more in depth and I'm not going to cover it in today's video, but do want to highlight how interactive the Enneagram tool is. For a type 1, they have arrows that go to a type 4 and a type 7. They then have wings that go to a 2 and a 9. And when you are on a journey of inner growth and using the tool to grow, you have access to all 4 of these different types. Again, it's all about how do we get you out of a box of your personality. That sounds funny, but for a type 1, it's about loosening up and having more fun, breaking the rules, not always having to be the kid that stayed inside and did their homework before they went out and played. Maybe go out and play and don't do your homework. I know it sounds crazy, but be more reckless, helping that 1 to loosen up. If all of that is resonating and ringing true for you, then there's a really good chance that you, in fact, are a type 1. So now what? Where do you go from here? Well, the Enneagram is a lifelong journey. I've been on it myself for over 13 years, and I continue to learn and go to workshops, work with a coach as best I can because I want to keep growing and learning. Helpful resources for me in my own journey were Beatrice Chestnut's The Complete Enneagram. Also, Personality Types Using the Enneagram for Self-Discovery by Riso and Richard Hudson are 2 really good books If you're a podcast person, I love podcasts myself. Enneagram 2.0, Enneagram IRL in real life, Typology, all do a great job of diving deeper and interviewing people of different types to help you unlock what your type is and where to go. Then explore. This is just the high level overview of the type 1, but explore more into the subtypes. I have more videos on subtypes because I'm so passionate about the subtype work within the Enneagram. It's why my business is called 927, the 9 types and the 27 subtypes. But learn what your subtype is. Dive deeper into the centers of intelligence. A type 1 falls into the body center. So, how does that show up? That strong need for justice, the orientation to anger, and how the 1 represses it because it's bad and they don't want to be bad, but can come out, leak out in other ways like irritation and frustration. And then lastly, the arrows that I just touched on the previous page around how they interact, how you can use those arrows to grow. Lastly, the amazing practice of self-observation. I love self-observation because it's a practice that allows you to observe without any judgment or guilt, which for ones, this is so important. No judgment, but just observe your behaviors. The next time you do get really frustrated and irritated and want to yell at someone, no judgment. Why? Why did that trigger you? When you start to reflect, when you start to notice these tendencies, it'll bring to light for you how you can grow, how you don't have to default to your 1 programming. Story that I'll leave with the type 1 is I was working at the time with the type 1, and she was an incredible account manager. She had every I dotted, T crossed when she sent out her emails. It had color coded, highlighting, bolded, action due dates. You knew exactly every detail was put in there. She put her blood, sweat, and tears into every follow-up email. And the client was getting frustrated with her. She was getting bad feedback and she didn't know what to do. Never in her life had she worked so hard and done everything so perfectly to get bad feedback. Well, turns out the client that she was working with was a type 8 and felt like she was taking too long on her turnaround times and she was providing way too much detail. It was overwhelming the client. What she thought was perfect and the right way to do something, the client didn't. And so she had to learn how to adjust in that moment. She learned that sometimes good is better than great, which might sound crazy if you're a type 1. But don't let great stand in the way of good. Continue to give yourself grace in those moments where you do sense that inner critic coming up. Ones are very oriented to right and wrong and a strong sense of justice and how they can be that in the world for others. But sometimes it's important to, for a type 1, let others take care of you. See how others are doing something so that you can get a break, so that you don't always have to be the responsible one and have it fall on your shoulders. I hope this was helpful and that you walked away with a better understanding of if you are a type 1 or not. If you're still questioning, I would encourage you to watch all of the 9 different type videos and compare them. But reminder again, it all comes down in these beginning stages of what is your motivation? Is it more important for you to be right and to be good? Because if so, you're probably a type 1. That's going to be that driver, seeing the world in black and white. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you.